The old oak door of my garage groaned as it was kicked open, the sound shattering the quiet of Meadowview Lane. Margaret Voss, our HOA president, stood there, eyes blazing, clutching a stack of violation notices like they were her life's manifesto. She stormed in, shouting about my unauthorized greenhouse project, claiming it was an eyesore that threatened the neighborhood's aesthetic harmony. She thought she'd caught me red-handed, that her ambush would force me to grovel. But Margaret had no idea who she was dealing with. Inside that garage was evidence she'd never see coming, and within hours, the most feared woman in Pine Hollow was exposed in front of the entire community, her reign of terror unraveling like a cheap sweater. Ever seen a bully's empire collapse in real time? Let me take you back 8 months to when a retired cybersecurity expert thought he'd found a quiet corner to garden, only to stumble into a conspiracy that would make your skin crawl. After 25 years of tracking hackers, decoding malware, and briefing corporate boards on data breaches, I, Nathan Clark, traded my laptop for a trowel and moved to Pine Hollow. The house was a fixer-upper, but the backyard was a dreamy, sprawling plot perfect for the greenhouse I'd always wanted. My dad used to say, "Grow your own food, Nate, and you'll never go hungry." Those words stuck with me as I spent my mornings planting tomatoes and tinkering with irrigation systems. The greenhouse was my sanctuary, a place to escape the digital chaos of my past and focus on something real. I set up a small security camera to monitor the build, mostly to deter vandals. Little did I know, that camera would catch something far more sinister than kids with spray paint. Pine Hollow had been a tight-knit community, or so I'd heard from Mr. Harold Jenkins, a retired mechanic who'd lived here for 50 years. He'd talk about potlucks and kids playing tag in the streets. But Margaret Voss changed all that when she took over the HOA. In just a year, she'd turned neighbors into snitches, issuing fines for everything from unapproved mailbox colors to excessive garden gnomes. My troubles started with a certified letter accusing my greenhouse of violating HOA rules on temporary structures. The bylaws said nothing about greenhouses, only sheds over a certain size. When I visited Margaret's pristine colonial-style home to clear things up, she barely looked up from her phone. "Mr. Clark," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "our community has standards you clearly don't grasp." That's when I noticed her phone screen photos of my greenhouse, taken from angles that meant someone had been on my property. That night, I checked my camera footage and felt my blood run cold. Margaret had been sneaking into my yard at odd hours, snapping pictures and measuring my greenhouse like she was planning a heist. One clip showed her inspecting my property line with a tape measure at dawn. This wasn't HOA oversight, it was an invasion. My cybersecurity instincts kicked in. I upgraded my setup motion-activated cameras disguised as garden stakes, audio recorders hidden in flower pots. If Margaret wanted to play spy, I'd show her how a pro does it. Margaret didn't let up. She passed new rules banning agricultural structures in backyards, clearly aimed at my greenhouse. She even had a neighbor report my compost bin as a health hazard. I started digging online and found a lead. Margaret's HOA email was linked to Green Valley Properties, a company buying up Pine Hollow homes at suspiciously low prices. Harold filled in the gaps, recounting how families like the Morrisons, the Lees, and the Kapoors had been harassed until they sold to Green Valley. Each time, Margaret cited community enhancement, but the pattern was clear. She was forcing people out. Things took a darker turn when I got a call from my daughter, Lauren, a forensic accountant with the IRS. "Dad, Margaret Voss is on our radar," she said, her voice tense. "She's tied to a tax evasion scheme through Green Valley Properties. They're funneling millions through fake property sales. My greenhouse wasn't just an eyesore, it was on a plot they needed for a luxury condo complex to mask their profits." That explained Margaret's obsession. Then came the real scare. A late-night visit from a man named Carl Decker, all muscle and menace, who suggested I sell. "Nice garden," he said, crushing a tomato with his boot. "Be a shame if it got ruined." Fear hit me like a freight train, but I called Lauren, who arrived the next day with a plan. We'd bait Margaret into exposing herself. I'd act defeated, agreeing to sell, while Lauren's IRS team monitored the deal with hidden cameras. When Margaret arrived with her lawyer, Alan Roth, and Carl, she was smug, laying out plans for condos that would elevate Pine Hollow. She let slip details about Green Valley's tax-dodging scheme, unaware that every word was being recorded. Lauren stepped in, badge in hand. "Margaret Voss, you're under investigation for tax evasion and fraud," she said, as agents moved in. Margaret's face went from triumph to terror, and the neighbors, gathered by Harold, cheered as she was led away. The aftermath was electric. Margaret, Alan, and Carl faced charges, and Green Valley's offices were raided, exposing a $30 million scheme. Margaret's rules were scrapped, and Harold took over as HOA president, promising fairness. My greenhouse became a community garden, a place for neighbors to grow together. Lauren taught kids about composting, and Pine Hollow came alive again. Kids played, families barbecued, and property values rose without coercion. Our story spread, inspiring other towns to fight corrupt HOAs. As I watch Lauren show a neighbor how to prune peppers, I know home isn't just land, it's where you stand your ground. My cameras still record, not for threats, but for the joy of a community reborn. Think you're stuck under a bully's thumb? One person with evidence can turn the tables.